webinar, Unlocking the Potential of Generative AI for EdTech. This is the first of a series of 3 webinars and hopefully more in the future. So my name is Esben Trier. I'm proud to serve on the board of EdTech Ukraine and also as an ambassador for EDT and partners in the Nordic Baltic region. It's wonderful to see so many members today. We officially formalized EdTech Ukraine in Q4 last year. And already today we are 37 members in the organization, and we are growing on an average with 2 new members a week, which is so impressive. So please give you all a round of applause for that. So thank you for all the members present here today. We have a lot of different activities going on, which you can dive into on the association homepage. And of course, also a very warm welcome to our new friends and partners to EdTech Ukraine, namely AWS and EDT and partners. As many of you know, AWS is already doing a crucial and very important job in Ukraine, helping with powering the backbone of the digital infrastructure. And today we're going to hear more about what AWS work with, of course, especially in the EdTech sector and with education.
A lot of tasks as usual, so I don't know, everything.
Oh, there was somebody who was in the not muting. Anyway, speaking of that, we are recording this today, so others can see the recording later. And feel free to use the chat if you have any questions as we go along. So now I will hand over the microphone to the program director, Alessandro Bilotta from EDT and Partners, who will present the webinar series and the speakers today. Alessandro?
Thank you, Esben. Hello, everyone. My name is Alessandro Bilotta. As Esben said, I'm the Director of Program Management with EDT and Partners. I'm based in London. Before we start, I just wanted to remind everyone that there is a function here on Zoom to add captions. So in case you wanted, you can turn that on. And I think a translation as well is available to Ukrainian. We would like to use all the functionalities that are available within this platform. Short introduction about EDT and Partners. We are a boutique consulting firm. We operate all over the world, and we specialize in education. So we're very happy to be here with you today because we very proud of finding a way of sustaining the education sector in Ukraine. And I think we can do it because we have the expertise of over 40 consultants from all over the world that will be able to assist you through this webinar and beyond. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add to this chat my email and the website of EDT and Partners. So in case you have any questions about the webinar or any other topics after the webinar, we'll be happy to be of support. This is a series of 3 webinars we're organizing with AWS for EdTech Ukraine. The wider theme is empowering Ukrainian EdTechs, innovation, infrastructure, and sustainability. We have today's webinar focused on GenAI, but then next week's webinar would be more a journey on cloud infrastructure. So Lyubomir Vanyov, the Chief Technology Officer at Juniper Education, will be joining us, and he will tell us about his own journey of bringing a company on the cloud and what the benefits and the related costs are of that. So it will be a very interesting conversation where you can learn what it means to be on the cloud and the pros and if any cons are there of being on the cloud compared to the traditional systems. We will close this first series of webinar with a webinar titled Securing Your Future, Navigating Donor Funding for Ukrainian EdTech Growth. So what we'll explore with our colleague David and our colleague Joe is the donor funding landscape for education in Ukraine. And I think that will be useful for you to understand what funds are available, can unlock your digital transformation. But on to today's webinar. So as I said, it's going to be focused on GenAI, and it will be kicked off by my colleague Laura, that will deliver an inspirational piece around how GenAI can transform education. My colleague Benny will follow with a demonstration of actually what we are doing as EDT and partners to enable GenAI in education. It will be a demonstration of our platform, our framework lecture. And then Juan Luis from AWS will just give us a short overview of GenAI on AWS. Throughout all of this, please do ask questions. You can use the chat, or you can just raise your hands and we can take your question from the floor. I've stolen already enough of your time. Laura, please go on. Laura's prepared a beautiful presentation, and off to you.
Thank you so much, Alessandro, and it's lovely to meet you all here today, and welcome to this first part of our webinar series then. I'm going to be sharing some thoughts about generative AI in education, and I bring to this the perspective of the teacher as well as of the wider technology space. So I hope that this is useful for you. We have about 20 minutes together in this segment to talk about the potential for generative AI in education, to think about some of the ways in which we might support the education sector with innovation, and also to consider some of the challenges, particularly in the ethical space. So I hope that this brings you some useful food for thought. First up then, let me introduce myself. So I work with EDT and partners. My name is Laura Knight, and I am a consultant specializing in educational technology, digital strategy, and AI. I'm based in the UK, not far from London, and I'm a former teacher of 20 years, originally a languages teacher, and I have worked in schools and leadership in the UK, in particularly thinking about digital leadership extensively. I now support schools, edtechs, and the international kind of government space as well, thinking about how to innovate well and use technology well in education. I've recently written a book about generative AI in the classroom, which is designed to support teachers and is not technical. It's a very easy read. And some of the pieces that I'm bringing for you today are expanded on in that book, if you would like to check it out. So the first thing I would like to invite is a recognition that in education, we have to work very hard on balance. And I would like to invite you to think around some of these challenges of balance in a complex space. First of all, we're starting with some philosophy here. And one of the things I hear from head teachers and principals is how tricky it can be to find balance in these three specific spaces. The first is, how can they be both pro-tech, encouraging technology, celebrating the joy of innovation, but also pro-boundaries, needing rules and structures and compliance to keep everybody safe? The second challenging balance is, how can educators be at the same time measured, so take their time, be careful, be cautious and considered about their decisions, but also be agile in a very fast moving space where technology is evolving so quickly? How do we tread lightly while also treading with care? The third piece that I think is worth us considering is around the challenge of balancing freedom and structure for educators. It strikes me that so many teachers have such creative power, such wonderful relationships with their students, and such deep curriculum knowledge. It's really important that we give them freedom and agency to be able to deliver their very best work in the classroom. However, schools need structures. We have curriculums, we have assessments, we have regulations, we have inspections, and therefore it's really important to find a balance between giving teachers the freedom that they like and need to do a good job. It's not a factory after all, but also to make sure that that is structured. So I think first of all, recognizing that we have complexity here is important, and I hope that that is a useful opening reflection. the next thing I'd like to invite you to think about is the challenge around the problems that we are trying to solve. I think in the EdTech space, it is easy to be idealist about how we can create something wonderful that's going to change the world. And we should be inspirational. Of course we should. However, we have to remember that every new EdTech product is not arriving to a blank canvas. There is existing structure or systems or platforms or processes that may be there, maybe for a long time, maybe they are new. And so I think the very first piece is how do you consider the existing ecosystem that you're moving into and understand its complexities and dynamics? There is something I had a wonderful conversation about recently with an EdTech colleague in the UK. And he said, oh, if we could just build that one tool that everybody is going to use for everything, oh, we'd be so successful. It would be amazing. And I said, really? Can one tool do everything? Should it? Should we even try? Because it strikes me that historically many edtechs have tried to deliver the one perfect, amazing, huge tool. And it ends up doing everything fairly badly. So wouldn't it be interesting to consider how you deliver a niche, a single vertical, a cluster beautifully, powerfully, excellently, and make something really impactful? So I like to think about this as a digital ecosystem like a coral reef. A monoculture isn't actually healthy in a coral reef. We like to think about this as a rich ecosystem with variety, where there is interplay and connectedness, and where everything helps everything else. Could be an interesting, if disruptive, way to reflect on it. But thinking about disruption, how do we balance then disrupting the market with integration into it? How do we respect the existing dynamics and connections? Where do they need shifting? How can we move things forward well? And I think to finish this point around considering the existing ecosystem, there is a lot of idealism sometimes around teachers' own learning. It's always interesting to me how complex and difficult it can be to support teachers with their professional development. Often they are under a lot of pressure of time. There might be limited resources. So supporting teachers with their learning to adopt new tools is a core part of the delivery of something disruptive, but yet often it isn't given enough time, space, or resource. So how can we scaffold their experience to help them adopt a new tool effectively? So let's think about how we can ask good questions. How can we use generative AI to raise the bar, to improve what they want in that teaching space? How can we engage teachers as co-designers of AI-enhanced solutions? And how can we really listen to their pain points? So thinking about user research strikes me as important. Let's think now, as we move forwards then in my second part, about how generative AI can support teaching and learning. And I think it's important we consider this in a systemic way. Let's think about the whole system. And I feel like if we have a combination of high functioning workflows, I'm thinking about assessment, about resources, about planning, about communications, all of these different pieces, and they work really well. If we then have powerful skills for our users and we have effective resources, we can then build a culture of innovation that is ready for generative AI, not just once, but iteratively. It's so important that we don't see this as a one-stop shop, as we'd say in English, a single moment. In fact, this is about innovation that needs to be sustainable and iterated and repeated and evolved. So let's look at how we can build agency and support schools with their agility as they take on these tools. Now, what could that look like in terms of the teaching and learning? Well, first of all, nobody will look back on their school days and remember really fondly page 42, exercise 3. That's just not something that stays in our memory, is it? And so we should think about how we can use generative AI to elevate the experience, to be more memorable, more inspirational, and frankly, more interesting for learners. And there is a great opportunity to support teachers with this. We don't need everything to be jazz hands and a performance, but there is a way to use generative AI creatively for this purpose. Something that is spoken about a lot, certainly in my corner of the world, is about personalization and using generative AI to help tailor learning for youngsters. I certainly think this is a very powerful thing. We don't any longer need to see learning as a one-size-fits-all thing. There is, with generative AI, the opportunity to easily create multiple versions to meet different students' needs. And that personalized support we can offer through additional coaching, through chatbot support, those kinds of things, very powerful indeed. So personalizing that experience for learners is definitely something we should be looking to as an opportunity to leverage more progress for the individual. But equally, I feel it's important for us to talk about creativity. Creativity is very difficult to measure, so often it doesn't get added into exams. However, it's so important in how we think about educational opportunities for youngsters and indeed for the teachers who are working with them. How can we build opportunities for creativity? And how can we use generative AI to lower the bar of entry, to make creativity more accessible and more engaging in learning processes? I think there is a great opportunity here for you to consider. Now, the other piece I wanted to mention here about opportunities, while we're thinking about personalization, is that so often teachers will have existing content. They will have materials, they will have resources, but that maybe they are due a refresh. So instead of always thinking about how do we start from the beginning and build a library or create something from scratch, also think about, well, what can we do to take what's there and make it better? How can we do that with integrity? How can we honor intellectual property? How can we build in high quality resources and use frameworks and research-based approaches to raise standards? This personalization and customization is something that is getting a lot of traction. So, how can we support excellent thinking about generative AI in education? I think there are three key questions to ask. First, what are the standards which teachers and leaders want to raise? What needs improving? Second, what are the problems that educators need to solve? Sometimes these are not glamorous problems. Sometimes they might be really dull, and that's okay. The third one is, what are the opportunities for educators and learners that we want to create that perhaps have not been available before? In this third piece, I'd like to talk about complexities and challenges, and think first of all about the difficult philosophical question around school and learning. If I am a teacher and I can use generative AI to set the work for the children, create the resource for the children, mark their work, and give feedback all automatically, and indeed the children can use generative AI to do the work, none of us have engaged intellectually with any of that loop. That is not a good idea, obviously, right? So what does it mean? What does it mean, really, in the age of AI for us to do the work of learning? Now, this is difficult because learning is a struggle. And often we use technology to soothe our discomfort and reduce struggle. We use technology to remove uncertainty and make it easier to know what's happening. But actually, learning requires us to have this struggle and to have that uncertainty. So when you're considering how to use generative AI in your approaches in EdTech, think about what it means to do the work. We know, don't we, that there are lots of platforms where there's wonderful question and answer sets, for example. I just look at my 11-year-old boy when he's doing his learning, and he will just say, I say, why are you just clicking? He said, I just click until it turns green. He doesn't even read the questions. He knows that, and once it's turned green, he can hit next. Now, if we are facilitating this kind of role play of learning instead of real deep thinking, then we are failing. So let's think about how we can create opportunities to really do the work and rather than to shortcut it. Next, I'd like to ask the question about assessment and testing. Traditional examinations, where the students sit in the hall at the end of the year with a pen and paper, are measuring an outcome of learning that does not necessarily recognize the process. They might have worked really, really hard all year, or they might have just crammed in that last 24 hours very effectively in order to do well. However, outcome-based learning is challenged by generative AI. So is process-based learning. We need to think about how we design tasks in education so that we can retain the integrity of the process and the integrity of the outcome. This is crucial. And what you can do in EdTech spaces to support teachers is make the journey, the process, visible. Because then the teacher can instantly see what's happened for that child. Now, while we're thinking about integrity, let's reflect on some other ethical questions, because this is complex, as we know. First, there are some challenges around responsible use, around boundaries and new rules that we need to help with the destabilizing that happens in a disruptive time. We need to be clear for the learners and for the leaders. When is it a good idea to take a shortcut? When is it okay to go faster or to work differently? But we also need to recognize that reliance on certain types of detection tools is short-sighted, it's unhelpful. And how do we build ethical practice into the way that the tools are used? Of course, there are also vulnerabilities around data and privacy. You know all of this already. But I think there is a problem with a lack of awareness and naivety from teachers around what to use and what's right and what's not. Teachers are not always aware of what's okay and naively will give more data away than they should, for example. And we could talk for many hours about the safeguarding threats to young people, which are amplified by generative AI. These threats evolving make it more difficult to be a parent and more difficult to be a teacher. So where you can offer additional guardrails and safeguards for young people with your tools, this is only a good thing. So work doubly hard, please, on this space, because it really does matter. Remember that the social media age failed so many young people, especially teenagers, who were given too much freedom with not enough life experience and were children in adult spaces. We can't make some of those mistakes again with generative AI. So build responsible practice and age appropriateness into your products and you will win. And then we need to think about protecting the vulnerable in particular. So those children with learning disabilities, for example, those children with processing or memory challenges, how can we help them especially to thrive? So as I come to the end of my presentation, I would like to just invite you to reflect on skills and how not only in your EdTech products you can think about the knowledge acquisition pieces, but also think about the skills. What are the skills that young people are going to need to thrive in the AI era, both in school, in further and higher education, at university, for example, and in their future lives at work? Where we can embed those skills and articulate them clearly as part of their metacognitive journey, I think that is a really powerful thing. Now, in just a second, I'm going to hand over to Benny, who's going to talk about lecture and give you a demo of that. And if there are questions that you would like to ask or anything you would want to mention, please do pop a question in the chat and I will keep an eye on those. I hope that that has been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Benny, you're next. Tell us everything about lecture.
But no, before doing that, no questions from anybody, really? No? Okay. Well, let's go. Yep.
I think they a bit ashamed of speaking English. So guys, don't be ashamed.
No, don't be ashamed. No, it's fine. And if you want to ask your question in Ukrainian in the chat, I will translate it and use a translator. Please ask your question in Ukrainian. It's okay.
Anyway,
Yeah.
if you will write it and the next lecture will start, so we can read it and answer after he finish. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Irina. All right, I wanted to share with you a very interesting project we have been working on in the last, I would say, 6 months with AWS. Okay, now I think you have been playing with ChatGPT or Perplexity, right? Or many other tool we have in the internet, right? But the point is that we wanted to simplify the process of adopting AI and using your own things, right? Protecting your own files, your own IP, intellectual property, and also give everybody the possibility to deploy and use AI in a different way, not purchasing something or a library and use it, right? And pay a monthly bill for AI, for OpenAI or Gemini and 25 other things, right? So AWS invested time and energy on us, and we built a AI framework, and we are giving the infrastructure and the code as open source. Okay, so if scanning that we have some friends here today with edtechs, companies that are using different education tools, and you would like to adopt AI in your IP, right, in your intellectual property, I'm going to show you something today that can be a very good solution, okay? And the aim is, please don't see this like another tool or another software you can pay for us. Is something we would like to give you as part of the journey of adopting AI, okay? So we are a service company. We are not a product company, okay? So we would like you to explore these services and this infrastructure as part of the AI journey you can have, okay? Let's just, I wanted to go in a way, but I'm going to go in the opposite way because I thought it was more interesting to do this way with you. I'm going to share my screen quickly here. Okay, I think you see the screen, right? Okay, imagine you have the possibility to create like a knowledge base, let's say a place where you can store information with PDFs, with data, with databases, let's say a web crawler, right, with public information, and you create let's call it a subject, right? As we are talking today in an education environment, let's call a subject, okay? Here, we simplify the way to...
Sorry to interrupt. We were seeing your Slack.
Oh,
no.
Slack, sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. It's here. Too many screens, okay? So here, okay? Perfect. I start again, okay? Here you see the folder, okay? You see the Ukraine subject is that concept of, let's say, folder or place where I can store information, okay? And I simplify the way of vectorizing the content and embedding in the information using some AWS services that I will tell you in a bit, okay? As you can see, this is public information thanks to my friend Alessandro who gave me this kind of contents. This is public information that we got about the 2030 initiative in several websites, okay? And very quickly, I was able to create, for example, a chatbot, okay? I need to apologize, but I'm not an Ukrainian speaker, okay? But somehow the magic happens behind the scenes, and we can see, for example, that all the content can be used in a specific language or in another or in many, right? Here is a chatbot with all these, let's say, vectorized content that I used, and I have like templates, questions that I can interact directly on this with this chatbot. Okay. If you want to share with me any question to evaluate that this chat is talking in Ukrainian with a decent level of quality, please share with me, and I will be happy to put it here. So let's try. It's probably the first time we are launching this with Ukrainian. So please give it to me, and I will try to put.
Guys, be more brave.
Yeah, I mean, you are with friends. Please, this is not a
Hello.
This is an interaction.
I think, can I ask you if we are talking about chatting on the ground of this contact we fed to this chat, or do you want us to ask anything?
That's a very good question. By the end of the day, behind the scenes, we are using a service called Amazon Bedrock. Okay, and this service is giving you the possibility to set these kind of things. So, for example, don't talk about soccer or don't talk about the weather. Okay, by the end of the day, these are things that are consuming tokens and money, right? So you can say, please talk only about this subject. You can do that. If you, for example, want to put a little bit of more safety or information about guardrails, like you are not allowed to talk religion, you are not allowed to talk about sex or something like that, right? Imagine your audience are students. All this setup and about everything, you can handle this with no limitations, and you don't need to be an engineer for doing that, right? This is all set up, and you can do this with natural language.
Okay, so please correct me if I am wrong. The difference between this and, for example, ChatGPT is that I can use this with my students. It will be we can use it together. I put content into this chat, and I can build some strategies, and I can teach there, and we can use this content for studying. Yeah.
Everything is true, and even more important, everything that is produced here is in your AWS account, so it's not public with anybody. So you are not using third-party LLMs or other vendors' accounts and policies. It's in your site, it's your database, it's your consumption of the model, and you have full control of everything.
So we are protected, but we are not limited as we are when we use, for example, ChatGPT.
You're right. Absolutely right.
Okay, thank you.
Even more important is the concept of having like all these models are now available thanks to AWS. So it's very complicated sometimes to use, for example, to produce good training materials for learning a language. Use one model. If you want to use image creation, use another model. If you want to produce some audio or to change voices or something like that, you use another model. So this orchestrator is what is based on Bedrock. So you have at your disposal all these models. Some are expensive, some other are very cheap, and you can switch from one to the other very quickly. Okay, so again, when you find very complicated to start with something like that, right? Like, hey, I need to study a lot. I need to do this with a new team of AI engineers. No, wait. This is super easy. Okay, it's much more important to understand 2 or 3 concepts instead of purchasing things and more things. So this is very interesting for you to explore, okay? Also, as we are giving the infrastructure and the code and everything, you, for example, have at your disposal a lot of use cases, okay? So, for example, imagine you want to create, for example, a podcast, okay? You have a PDF, you have a set of contents, you upload this, and you can create a podcast, like a couple of people interacting to each other and talking about algebra or talking about history, right? Something like that, okay? Very, very quickly, I will have a wide overview and I can share more information after the meeting. But for example, transcriber, right? We can upload a video or connect directly with a YouTube link, for example, create a transcript, create a summary of the video. And when you have some international services, and it's very used in at least here in Spain, where I'm based, well, for international students, right? People that are coming from a semester or a specific MBA or whatever, and they are coming from Ukraine, as an example, right? Instead of investing a lot of time learning Spanish, which is sometimes complicated, you have services on the fly to do this inside the LMS, inside the platform of the university, for example, right? These services are, again, a compilation of things, but don't see this as a platform, okay? So if you have a company or you have a product you would like to explore with these kind of things, we are happy to help you with the documentation and everything, okay? Very interesting, this one of evaluations. Do you know what a rubric system is, right? So a rubric system, maybe for Irina, I think the face was not very clear. So very easy. It's not, let's say, a mathematical or a physics problem you need to solve. You would like to have an evaluation based on several, let's say, topics or indicators, okay? So here I have an example of something that we built very recently. Imagine that I'm as a student, I want to finish my end of the course feedback to the teacher, saying it's going well, it's bad, it's okay. In this case, I'm going to share feedback about the class preparation, communication style, evaluation criteria, classroom management, subject knowledge, okay? Different, let's say, topics. And I can set different criteria, right? Like up to 30%, 70%, I'm defining the mechanism to size this, okay? So when you have this done, you can send, let me give you an example. You can send a text like this, right? Like imagine that I'm as a student, I'm writing about a lot of people, a lot of things, and this rubric system is understanding what I have been reading, and it's giving me many points. So, for example, my teacher has no idea. I mean, he's a very nice person. The management of the classroom is doing very well, but honestly, he's not a very good. He's not an expert in the field. Okay, so this can be also done by hand, and it's extracted. So this is probably a more complicated use case, but everything together is understood that you can use. For example, I see several hands up.
Yes, first is mine. Because we're running a bit out of time and we have Juan Luis that needs to cover the final part. Anna, we'll be very happy to schedule an additional meeting to just with you and anyone else that wants to hear more about lecture. And we can just tell you more about the services, because we could spend an hour showing you everything it can do. So thank you, Benny, for this demonstration. Please reach out to us. I copied, pasted the link as well of lecture, so you can have more information there. And Juan Luis, the floor is yours.
Perfect.
Hello, everybody. Benny, sorry, and apologies for interrupting you. By the way, I think what Benny was talking about is going to be, far more interesting than what I'm going to say. Mainly, it's his kind of landing concepts and like giving you real life examples of how you can put GenAI into production. But okay, happy to take my slides, Benny. Sorry for that. I owe you one. Okay. Good. Let me just see if I can share my screen here.
Can now interrupt you one more time? I think the last one. We have a question to Laura, but I can't see her here. If she's still here.
Yeah,
no.
Laura is here.
Yeah?
I would say that perhaps let's have Juan Luis do his section, then we can stay a bit longer, a few minutes longer, and Laura can.
Okay. No, thanks.
Thank you.
The floor is
So that
yours.
actually I have to run to the airport. So after this, on the hour, I have to kind of have a taxi waiting for me. I'm going to the airport. So apologies for that. So very quickly, I want to thank EdTech Ukraine and ETM partners for giving AWS the opportunity to meet this wonderful community of Ukrainian edtechs. Actually, we at AWS we really admire the work that you do in the education area to innovate, especially around technology, especially given the difficult, kind of challenges and situation you're facing. So, our admiration and, kudos to you. My name is Juan Luis Vilches. I work in the EMEA education team. I'm going to explain later, but, I'm kind of leading the EdTech business. And we're working on different areas of the education business. I'm based in Madrid. I'm really, really excited to be talking to all of you today. Although the subject of this slot is really about GenAI and like technical overview of what AWS can do, I want to take this opportunity to talk to you about what AWS is doing in education in general and with edtechs in probably in a little more detail. And when we talk about education at AWS, we're typically referring to these three different areas of business of work. Probably the main one is primary education, secondary education, and higher education. I work with schools, with universities, with business schools, and higher education in general. And this is where our teams are talking to these organizations to help them develop the next generation campuses using GenAI, especially in the recently, but more importantly, how they can leverage all the benefits that the AWS cloud can bring. Another important area of business comes from research, mainly academic research. And this is an important and very, fast-growing area for business. And then the most exciting one for me, actually, at least, it's, our work with edtechs, with ISVs in the education space and publishers. And this is probably more exciting because of two reasons. This is not about just how edtechs and publishers can use our technology to build more competitive, more advanced solutions to kind of address the educational challenges, but also this brings another angle of, edtechs using AWS, but at the same time, edtechs partnering with AWS. So typically, as an edtech, you'll be addressing primary, secondary, or higher education, talking to ministries of education. And this is what our sales teams are doing. So making sure that once you're on AWS, we're able to help you grow is another way of, making sure that we're expanding your impact and at the same time helping you grow your business and helping us also grow our business. So it's a kind of win-win-win situation. In terms of another number around AWS and edtechs, just some numbers on more than 1,000 edtech customers or edtech companies that are using AWS in the industry. If you look at the GSB and 150 tech listing, you'll find that 93% of these companies are using AWS, which means that we have a really, really high market share in terms of penetration in terms of the tech industries. And we can talk about many, many different names. I'm not putting any here, but if you think about the big LMS providers like Blackboard or Instructure, D12, they're using AWS. If you think about SIS, Student Information Systems, companies like Illusion or Tribal, they're using AWS. If you think about language learning, companies like Babbel or Duolingo, they're using AWS, and they can go on and on. And many of these companies are using AWS. And again, maybe 6 years ago, the AWS education team was built, And very quickly, we kind of started investing into the EdTech area specifically. Today, we have over 150 people dedicated specifically to the EdTech business. And this can be account managers, it can be partner managers, it can be solution architects, technical account managers, and people that are helping EdTechs in the expansion programs, helping their people that are helping EdTechs innovate and then work on POCs and many different ways. Very quickly, I'm trying to kind of build a message to GenAI. Just last year, we worked with an external organization to ask, for a survey and, asking them how to get some insights on what was top of mind for education leaders. And this is kind of a ranking that we got from this company called Holland IQ. And number one in this trend, no big surprise, is AI, artificial intelligence. But if you look at the other areas of let's say, of interest, personalization, assessment, learning analytics, these are some of the words that already the partners have mentioned, and that actually better addressed with artificial intelligence and generative AI recently. So big trend around AI, and actually that's what we're talking today. Another trend that we're seeing with EdTechs is really expansion strategies, and we're seeing more and more, as EdTechs kind of become more mature and start to kind of have a big footprint in their own domestic markets, how they're looking at other areas of the world where they can grow their business. And given probably the situation where, in terms of VC funding, we're probably not going through the best years in terms of funding. So we're seeing that these companies and EdTechs that are really existing, growing in their domestic markets, are looking at international markets, to expand. And also kind of very linked trend that's associated to this too is really market consolidation. So we're seeing these companies growing into other markets, into other areas of the business. We're also seeing this kind of limited funding from VCs in terms of helping new startups. It's probably not the best time at this stage. So we do see this market consolidation where, we see companies kind of emerging, or, acquisitions, and also like partnerships where, probably an LLM providers, talking to an SIS provider to kind of go and grab that piece of the market together. So these are the three areas, and related to the three areas, these are the three main areas of work that we're doing at AWS in the EdTech team and the EdTech organization. One is around optimization, and very related to this how this market is consolidating into like fewer players, and making sure that when they're using AWS, and again many of them are using AWS, that from an economic perspective they can really understand how this AWS cost, let's see, kind of relates to the business, and how we can open new opportunities to invest and develop new features, new markets, new products. Also, big pillar around innovation, and again very related to GenAI. But of course, before GenAI, we have to look at the data strategy, because GenAI is really about all the data that we can use and we can leverage, and that's within your own IP. So innovation, data strategy, and GenAI, important pillars. And then probably third big area of conversation with our EdTechs is really about expansion and growth. I mentioned, how these companies are going to other markets. The more successful these companies are, the more successful we are, and we're all, kind of benefit from this growth. And again, big area market. We don't do this alone. We work with many consulting partners. Many of them have a big interest and skills and experience in AWS, and actually EdTech partners is one of our preferred partners in terms of working in the education space, not just in EMEA, but globally now. I don't have much time. I won't go into much detail, but around these three main areas of work, we have a number of programs, a number of plays, a number of activities, funding, resources that so we have a really kind of well-structured approach to these three areas of work. So the potential, now going to GenAI, which is one of the main themes talking about innovation. I think it's quite clear by now, and EDT and partners, I think the two presentations we just saw, we saw how this the number of the opportunities GenAI is bringing to us is like tremendous, and not just like in different areas, of course, when it comes to the creativity of the work, and of course how we can be more productive, and how we can help our students, our teachers, and the whole education community connect much closer. We have a few examples here from some of the edtechs that we're working with. For example, Sasayan is working on a cyberbullying solution, very personalized. Cambridge Open Assessment and other companies are working on like very personalized assessment solutions. This help, of course, to improve the student experience, but at the same time, it can help, boost the creativity and productivity. And for example, around assessment solutions, probably making sure that we're able to mark this assessments more quickly, or provide feedback more quickly is another way to help boost that productivity for teachers, or for the education institutions. And then, of course, that will be impacting the overall business. Again, not going into much detail. I know we are short of time. Again, here we know about the potential of GenAI, and I think we had a really interesting conversation before about ChatGPT versus other options. And again, really, I think the main difference here is the data. And in your case, if you're working as an edtech or as a publisher, the data is what makes you relevant and important. And if we can find a way which we can leverage that data that is yours, that is unique to you and to the students and teachers and the education community that you kind of represent, this is where we can find the best use cases, making sure that that data is there, and we're leveraging this data that we can trust, that we know it's secure, versus data that's out there in the internet, in the industry, we cannot really control. I won't go much into AWS technical conversation, but to give you a very brief overview, this is kind of the three areas where AWS is working around generative AI. In the bottom layer, we're talking about like the infrastructure layer, and this is where organizations that are working on building or training, reinforcing their own models are working with AWS. So we have great partnerships with NVIDIA, but at the same time, we're also developing our own chips. So it gives us a lot of flexibility if this is when we're talking to these organizations, building, training their own language models. In the second middle layer, we're talking about the tools that we can use to build applications with the large language models. And I'll go a little deeper on that one. And I think this can be relevant to most of you if you're builders. And then on the top layer, we're talking about the application layer. This is where kind of you are using GenAI with AWS as, let's say, as a user, as a company. Just in a little more detail. Again, bottom layer, infrastructure, I think this is not relevant to you. If you are interested in building models, let me know. I guess this is not the case. If you're at edtech and you're in the education industry, most likely you'll be looking for, on the top layer, Amazon Q business, which is this kind of chatbot interface that you can use to leverage your own internal data as employees of your organization, making sure that you can use the data that you're working with in your organization. For example, as at Amazon, as employees, we have access to Amazon Q for Business. Again, making sure that we have access to all the data we have internally, but also data that is stored in third-party applications such as Microsoft Teams or Slack and other productivity tools that we may be using. Amazon Q for Developer is also very interesting. If you are in the development area and you're building your applications, you can imagine how GenAI can help you with optimize your coding and give you best recommendations and so forth. Let me just double click on Amazon Bedrock, which is, again, this is probably the most relevant feature that we can probably offer for you as builders, if you're an edtech and you're developing solutions and applications to work in education. Again, probably the three main areas is how Amazon Bedrock can accelerate the development of GenAI applications using a range of foundational models with an API approach. Again, very, very simple to use, and Benny was kind of referring to this before. And also important, making sure that there's a number of foundational models out there in the market. They will have different, let's say, main areas where they're kind of important, or where they're relevant, or where they're really good at from a price perspective, from a performance perspective, and also the type of data that they're probably best equipped for. Customize the foundational model there and use already, the tool that my daughter will be using when she's studying, but really, kind of build your own application, using your own data. And I think the demonstration that EdTech and partners has showed is a good testament of what can be done. And, I kind of encourage you to have a look at that and, work together with EdTech and partners or together with us to move on and progress. This is just an example of one of the slides. We use a few slides that we use when we're talking to universities, for example. When we're talking about GenAI, we're talking about different use cases. At the same time, we're also talking about some tools that are out there built on AWS that can help them address this specific use cases around student services or campus management or academics. Won't go much in detail into this. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, when we're working with partners, helping them expand, helping them grow their business is important, and it's a focus area for us. As I mentioned at the beginning, many edtechs in the industry are already using AWS. It's kind of our challenge to help them grow their business, making sure that they're closer to customers, and that they go to new countries, new markets, and so forth. We have a number of programs, mainly kind of under the AWS Partner Network, APN umbrella, or partner program, with a number of benefits and resources for you to look at. Marketplace is just an example of how we can kind of provide an offer and make your solutions more available to our own AWS customers that kind of procure third-party products through our own AWS marketplace. And to end with, I'll give you just one more slide on credit. If you're an edtech, you're probably looking for some funding. If you're a startup, then I'm sure you're looking for some funding. Here's just 2 tips of areas that you can explore. AWS Activate Startup Program. This is kind of our main program to help startups globally. It's a combination of access to grant funding, at the same time AWS technical support, access to pre-built infrastructure templates, and many other benefits. I kind of encourage you to look at this specifically. Also, something that was announced late last year, it's the AWS Education Equity Initiative. This is where AWS has announced we're making $100 million available to the education industry, especially if you're working with underserved or, let's say, communities that are facing specific challenges. So I think you in Ukraine, I think you are very entitled to apply to this funding because of your special situations. So have a look at these 2 things. If you need more help, let me know, but I'm sure you can find some information on Google. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, I did share my email, and EdTech partners and EdTech Ukraine have my contact information. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan Luis. Perfect. I think we just on time, on the dot. So Irina, anything from you before we conclude?
Just to remind that EdTech Ukraine Association are open to everyone who want to develop their project, develop themselves, and use all these opportunities, our opportunities and opportunities of our partners to grow yourself, and in this way grow our Ukrainian economics, and to show another EdTech in the world that we can do these beautiful things you are doing from day to day. I know this because I'm here with you and try to support as much as possible. So thanks for being here today and to interested in these topics. I think from my side it will be that's it. So I'm very grateful to our partners today that they could plan this awesome topic, and of course practice some English, because it's always very useful for us. Yeah, we are trying do our best. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Irina. As I said, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, to Benny, to Laura, to Espen if you have any questions. Follow-up demonstration on lecture. We're very happy to do that. And we'll see you all next week.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day, everybody.
prepare all your questions to next week. So
Please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
thanks.
Thank you.